Okay, so now we're going to talk about the things that are needed in order for evolution to happen. So the requirements include variation. The traits must be heritable, they must be passed on to offspring. There must be competition for resources, and only some of the individuals in a species reproduce. So let's walk through all of these. And we're going to start with variation. Genetic variation produces variation in appearance, in health, in ability to digest certain foods, and this is the foundational material that evolution works on, that evolution selects. This can be small. If we look at this, these are all American toads, and they come in a bunch of different colors depending on where they live. And if you look at them and you think about this, it makes sense. Green colored individuals are going to survive best in habitats that are green. They would show up dramatically if they lived in rocky habitats or areas where the leaf litter covers the floor and the area is mostly brown. Conversely, brown individuals are going to show up brightly against green. It's going to be pretty easy to spot them. They're not going to survive well there. So these variations can be small. So an increase in red blood cell concentration might allow a species to survive better at high altitudes. You need lots of red blood cells to carry oxygen, and at high altitudes there's less oxygen, so more red blood cells would be an advantage. But they can also be much more significant than that. Large, long-lived fish species, things like tuna, are starting to mature and be capable of reproducing at a younger age and a smaller size. Why is this? Because fishing pressure removes the large fish. If you make your living catching fish, you want to catch the biggest fish. And you want those big fish because you can sell them for more money. So fishing is reducing the individuals who live longer lives and get to the big size. Without the fishing pressure, the smaller fish would really not have a chance to breed. So this variation, I've said this several times, it arises due to genetic mutation. Most genetic mutations do not result in variation in phenotype. Phenotype is the physical expression of the gene. If it does, if that mutation does result in a change in the phenotype, it's usually going to be bad. So the rarest mutations result in changes to the phenotype that are good, but evolution selects for those good mutations. The traits or the characteristics that are variable have to be inherited. Evolution acts on traits that are encoded in the genes. If it's not in the genes, it's not heritable. You can't necessarily pass it down. So things like, how do you wear your hair? What's your favorite food? Do you like reality television? Do you like to watch sports? Those are things that you can learn from your family. You can, but not everybody is going to have those traits within the same family. Inherited traits are things like, can you digest milk as an adult? Cats, if you scare them, they hiss and they arch their back. That's actually in their genes. That response is in the genes. Giraffes have long necks. That's inherited. We're also not passing on traits that you develop during your lifespan. If you have your wisdom teeth removed by a dentist, your kids are not going to inherit not having wisdom teeth from you. We also don't see inheritance in traits that happen later in life. So diseases that show up after peak reproduction period, genetic diseases, things like most types of Parkinson's disease, Huntington's disease, Alzheimer's disease. These things show up after peak reproduction, and so they're really not having a negative effect on your ability to reproduce. And so evolution doesn't act on those. There have to be limited resources. Individuals have to compete with others of their own species for these limited resources. And these things can be food, shelter, water, mates. Only the winners are going to access enough resources to survive and reproduce. And the winners are the ones that have the characteristics or traits that give them an advantage. It is estimated that in elephant seals, like these boys pictured here, only about 1% of males ever get to mate with a female. So only 1% pass on their genes, and everybody else, all the other males, don't get that opportunity. Now, sometimes species must also compete with other species for limited resources. Black walnut trees and sunflowers both produce compounds that inhibit other plants from growing. This is why if you feed sunflower seeds to your birds and the outer layer, the hull of that seed, ends up on the ground underneath, that inhibits plants from growing underneath your bird feeder. And it can also be more direct than that. Things like when lions drive hyenas off of a hyena kill. Yeah, you heard that correctly. Lions are more likely to steal prey from hyenas than the reverse, despite what Disney movies would tell you. Okay, so there's competition. And not all individuals get to reproduce. In fact, like we saw with the elephant seals there, 99% of males do not get the opportunity to reproduce. The odds are better for the females, but even then, not all of them get the opportunity to reproduce. So the ones that do are the ones that are considered fittest. Fittest means best suited to surviving in the current environment. This can be speed. This can also be things like camouflage, modifications to the digestive system so that an individual can get more food or more nutrients from their food or eat different foods, as well as the ability to find and attract mates. This is what is called natural selection, and it's the best understood portion of evolution. And by best understood, I mean by the average person, not necessarily by people who study evolution. The vast majority of wild animals and plants never reach reproductive age. The vast majority of animals that reach reproductive age do not reproduce. So it's really only a small group of individuals who are born, survive to reproductive age, and get the opportunity to reproduce. Of course, humans, we come in and we interfere with this kind of thing when we breed our domestic animals and plants. Humans allow less fit animals to reproduce. So instead of picking the healthiest bulldogs, the ones who are best able to survive, and breeding those, we're breeding them for those really short, squat faces and that big, wide musculature. And what we've got now is modern day bulldogs who, if they get pregnant, have to give birth by C-section. They cannot give birth naturally. They have a really short lifespan compared to other similar sized dog breeds. They're not the only one. Pugs, Boston Terriers, any of these dogs with really, really short noses tend to have a lot of breathing problems and a shorter lifespan. I've got a painting on the left that shows what bulldogs looked like in 1817 and what we have modern day as an English bulldog. But if humans disappeared off the planet, so would English bulldogs very shortly. Okay, so that's what is required for evolution to occur.